In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the difference between conditioning training and speed training. The reason why I made this video is that there is a growing debate and two sides that are pretty far apart on whether football players should dedicate more time to conditioning versus dedicate more time to speed. And I think it's kind of the old guard versus the new guard, right? You have an old guard of coaches that trained a certain way where you run longer distances, you do gassers, you run till you puke, the hard work type side of football training. And then you have a new guard of trainers, performance coaches that argue that it's more quality over quantity, and we should be focusing more on performance enhancement, speed, explosiveness, rather than really dedicating a lot of time to long distance bouts of conditioning. So I'm going to break down why would we be here and why we should train speed and what are the different purposes, the different training outcomes when addressing each of these sides. So I'm going to start with conditioning. So conditioning, this is going to sound obvious, but conditioning is for athletes who are out of shape. So again, if you are an athlete that has to tap out after a couple plays, this conditioning would be probably what you need. So these are conditioning is for athletes who are out of shape. Okay. Now I was an athlete that was asthmatic. My legs could go forever, but my lungs couldn't go forever. And it was mostly just because I have the disease of asthma. But there were a lot of players on our team that weren't asthmatic. They just were out of shape. They couldn't last for more than a few plays before having to get tapped out. Conditioning has its place, right? But what happens is most teams, they put a lot of emphasis on conditioning and they have a lot of players who can run for a long time, but might not necessarily be fast. So for speed training, these are for slow athletes, right? I mean, if you're slow, train your speed. It sounds obvious, but there are a lot of players out there, and you might be one of those players watching this video that don't know whether you're fast or slow, or you don't know the difference between conditioning training and speed training. When I was in high school, I thought, I'm going to go run more 110s, and that's going to make me faster. I'm going to play better if I run more 110s or more gassers. I'm going to run as hard as I can through this conditioning drill, and this is what's going to make me a better player. And the facts were that it did not make me a better player. I stayed the same speed from freshman year all the way through senior year. And I didn't see that progression that I was looking for so I could play at the next level. So, with conditioning and speed, the main things to me that kind of differentiate these two is rest periods and rep intensity. So, as for conditioning, we have to train for the game. We have to train to meet the demands of the game. So, when we're talking about a football game, we're talking 5 to 7 second efforts, plays, a run play, pass play. They typically last 5 to 8 seconds, followed by a 15 to 40 second rest. Our rest times 15 to 40 seconds. Your conditioning should reflect the football game rest periods. And of course, there's timeout rests, commercial break rests if you're a college or professional player. But your rest will mostly be 15 to 40 seconds. Speed differs in the way that we're not looking to get you in shape for the game. We are looking to elevate your performance. Much like when you're in the weight room and you do a set of bench press and you rep out 80% of your max for 10 reps. And that's a crazy example. 80% of your max for 5 reps. You're not going to get under that bar in 30 seconds to a minute and do it again and expect yourself to do that same rep scheme again. Your muscles are not recovering. When it comes to speed training, you need to recover. You need your ATP to regenerate. You need the creatine system to regenerate. So what we want to do is we want to rest 1 minute per 10 yards sprinted. Okay, your rest time should be 1 minute per 10 yards. So if you're running a 40-yard dash, you should rest about 4 minutes in between reps so you can attack that next 40-yard dash with the highest intensity, highest effort level possible. Again, if you're training for conditioning, shorter rest periods that mimic the game. If you're training for speed when sprinting, you should be looking at longer rest periods to recover and have rep quality. When it comes down to being a good, well-rounded football player, you need to have a little bit of both in your training. But I also think if you're a coach watching this or a trainer watching this, we have to understand how to be specific to a particular athlete. So, like I said before, if you have an athlete come to you who can barely perform in a session without being out of breath, without having to take breaks, they're out of shape and they need some level of conditioning. They need some level of pace to their workouts so they can adapt. For speed, if you're getting an athlete that falls below your standards of speed, you should be training speed and utilizing this type of rest structure in between sprints. So how do you condition a football player and how do you speed train a football player? So for conditioning, there are three main ways that I really like to condition football players. The first one is simple, short sprints. Short sprints of 10 to 25 yards. And you can follow that up with 15 to 40-second rests. Again, you don't want to jump in and just hammer 100 sprints. You want to have a progression to it. What we did in school were we did 4 quarters. So maybe one quarter was 10 sprints, and then we would do a 4 or 5 minute rest, and then we do the next quarter, and then so on and so forth. The next way that you can condition is what's called perfect plays. And this is my favorite way to condition. And what it is you have plays. A play would be 3 push-ups. Another play would be, actually it would be 4 push-ups, 3 burpees, a 40-yard dash, and a 5 and back, 10 and back sprint. So each one of these would be a play, and our coaches would structure this to where a quarter would be 30 plays and 4 quarters would be 120 plays. And by the end of the off season, we would do 120 plays. It was brutal. People threw up, but it was game-like pacing. Explosive movements like push-ups, burpees, 40-yard dash, explosive 5 to 8 seconds of effort, followed by 15 to 40 seconds of rest. The last way, which I also really like, is grappling. Okay, grappling, if you look up ADR coach development on Instagram, he posts a lot of amazing stuff about contact prep, tackling, grappling, and what that does is help you get ready for the physical demands of football. If you've played the game of football before, you know that the demands that the strain on your body that comes from grappling with another player versus the strain of running on the field are 2 different things. Especially if you're a wrestler, you know the feeling is different when you're wrestling someone versus when you're running. It's just a different type of physicality. So grappling is also a really good way to condition you for football. Now let's talk about speed training for football. And this is my bias. This is my expertise, really, because I do this on a daily basis with football players. What we do is 2 to 3 sessions a week, okay, of training technique. Technique is like the first part. It's not the highest priority. Technique is like a 5 to 10 minute segment of our day where we just reinforce proper sprint patterns, and then that readies us for time sprints. So it's technique, time sprints, followed by some type of resisted sprinting and plyos. 2 to 3 times a week, you do this 4-part segment and you're training speed. Time sprints is the most important. I would say resisted sprints is second most, plyos is third most important, and technique is your warm up and reinforcing good habits when running. If you do this 2 to 3 times per week, you should see some really good improvements, especially if you track everything. If you track all your sprints, you're going to see what's working, what's not working, whether your training is working overall, and then you can make adjustments from there. But again, it's depending on what type of athlete you are or the type of athlete you're dealing with. You're going to take one of two approaches, and you're probably going to take both of these approaches and mix them into a cohesive program. A lot of times, I tell my athletes that some days are going to be, we're going to kick your butt, and then there's going to be some days we're going to feel like you didn't even train when you work with us, because it's some days we're going to really focus on rep quality on a speed type day, and then there's going to be days where we're looking to get the most out of you from a pacing standpoint, from a conditioning standpoint, to prepare you for the game. And that's what makes football so important, is you have to be an amazing athlete, but you also have to be able to put out repeat efforts on the field. So if you have any questions about the breakdown between conditioning and speed training, feel free to comment down below. Subscribe to CAB Training for more videos like this and more drills and exercises to help you with your speed and performance on the football field. Thanks so much for watching, and let's get better today.